we had the highest insurance premiums in the country, and it wasn't even close. Prior to 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when the storms hit, those storms caused billions and billions. They still haven't calculated how much damage just in the Tampa Bay region where I live. We already had insurance companies leaving the state because it didn't make sense. We have it's called Citizens Insurance. I don't want to bore you with the details, but it's the only insurance company that by law has to be in Florida, and they're losing money. It's subsidized by the state of Florida, and they already were in trouble before these hurricanes hit. So people are not getting paid out, and the premiums are going to skyrocket. And by the way, that was already a major reason for people being unable to afford homes in Florida.
Welcome to the Real Estate Mogul MD podcast. Thanks for tuning in and taking control of your financial future. This is a show where we not only motivate and inspire, we give you actionable real-world experience to help you live life by design. You'll hear journeys and stories from other physicians, investors, coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs. And now, here's your host, Brett Riggins. What a wonderful conversation we have today. And again, I know I say that a lot, but I was able to dig in on so many things that I hear a lot. I see a lot. I have a lot of conversations about this. Do I put my real estate property in my personal name, an LLC? What's this land trust thing? How does all this work? What are my protections? You know, this is not legal advice here, but today's conversation, I get to dive into so much of this. And who better to have this conversation with? Today's guest is a seasoned real estate and business attorney with over 12 years of legal experience in Florida and New York. He's successfully represented developers, investors, and financial institutions in over 1,000 transactions totaling more than $12 billion. And on top of that, he's an investor himself. We're going to talk a little bit about those investments and just dive into the things that you want to know and the things that maybe you don't want to know as well. Everybody, please welcome the deal maker, Bishoy Habib. Bishoy, welcome to the party. I mean, welcome to the show, not the party. It could be a party. We're just talking about that, but welcome to the party, man.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you having me on, Brett.
So where are you coming to us from today?
I'm in Tampa, Florida. We were hit, but we are resilient and we're bouncing back.
Oh, man. What a story. Well, that could be a whole podcast in of itself. So as we're recording this here, the end of 2024, just crazy storms came through the Gulf Coast. Basically, there was Helene and Milton. So some crazy things here. So maybe we'll touch a little bit on that. But before we get there, how does it feel to be Bishoy today?
It feels amazing, man. It's a blessing. I woke up. Everything is my wife's doing well. My family's well. Nothing to complain about. It's another great day. How about you, Brett?
Never been better. Lungs filled with air. And today that air is even brought to me through the sunshine. So the sunshine is beautiful as well, too. But yes, hey, man, when you find that path, so when you wake up every day grateful, one, that you woke up, two, that you're breathing, three, maybe your lights came on, maybe four, that your toilets are flushing, something that some people take for granted, in which I may be one of them at some points. But hey, when Helene and Milton come through, it brings a whole different perspective into your life for sure.
It does.
Tell the listeners just a little bit about what you have going on. What's your professional background?
Absolutely, man. Well, I am an attorney. I've been doing it for 12 years. So I'm a real estate attorney. I'm also a real estate investor. I'm also a broker. So I have agents working under me as well. Predominantly what I focus my day-to-day on is the legal side and building up my law firm, Levacy Legal. I founded it last year after 11 years out. And so what we do is we actually focus on working with investors on the real estate transaction. So if they're buying, selling, if they're forming a partnership or some sort of a fund, a joint venture, we could help with that. If you're a landlord and you need help, with the leases, or you're having issues with your tenant, we could help with that. And then on the financing side, we represent a lot of lenders everywhere from, the big lenders that you've heard of and you drive by every day. So big banks all the way to private lenders. So I know you have a lot of, doctors and such on here, and I know a lot of doctors love to make private loans, and so I work with a lot of those people just to make sure they're protected when they're lending that money, or they're protected when they're investing that money as equity. So anything within that sphere, and then a lot of times those same clients then need help with their business, which we can help with, their estate plan, which we could help with, and litigation, which we have a team for as well.
Interesting. And every time, I'm probably like a lot of people, when I hear attorney, like there's like these screeching sounds in my mind that's like, what's that? No. But over the years working with attorneys, I think for me, it's a little different because when we break down the walls, Bishoy, you're just a dude sitting on the other side of the table from me. For the listeners can't see, but you've got your diplomas on the back there. Degrees on the back, and those just say a little different than somebody's medical degree or somebody's construction degree or something like that. Ultimately, you're here to help people. And in this journey, you started investing in real estate yourself. What types of investments do you do in real estate?
I've been attracted to, ever since I was in college, I've been attracted to passive investments, right? And the reason is what I do consumes a lot of my time. And I'm surrounded by a bunch of smart people, and being an attorney, I'm in the know on who's making moves and what's going on and what's the next wave. And so I've been fortunate enough to be able to make passive investments from the time I was in college and continue to kind of roll those over. Some of those have been in hospitality. We were involved in New York City hotels for a long time, my family and I got a bunch of other people in that. More recently, I created a fund for one of my clients in the land entitlement space. If you don't know about land entitlement, it is a money machine, but it's also long life cycle, so 12 to 18 months, but you can 10x your money if you know what you're doing. So land entitlement's cool. I will tell you what I hate doing nowadays is fix and flips and renovations, because I did one last year, disaster. I broke even by the grace of God. And then I have to do another one here because, I just have a property that I have to do it with. So I hate doing it. It's not what I like doing. And to the doctors out there, be careful with the fix and flips. I'm not telling you not to do them, but you have very little control over what's happening. It's tough to deal with contractors. So by no means am I trying to scare anyone away from doing them. I know a lot of people that make money doing them, but you have to be on top of those people and on top of those projects. And that brings me back to passive investment, right? This is why I kind of want something where people in place, they're running a business. And the main thing is you want to vet the people that you're giving your money to first. You want to vet the opportunity second. That's my opinion.
Yeah. So much there that I could dare into. The first thing that popped out of my mind, obviously, is land entitlement. And just for my own knowledge, to me, this sounds like, hey, I'm going to go buy some vacant land where I know the zoning can work for this new direction. I can take it to so far in the development process and then sell it to somebody who maybe a builder or something who then can actually put the sticks and stones in place.
That's exactly right. Except it's usually done with larger parcels. So it would be, a plot that, might be subdivision. Exactly. Yep. Yes. So you'll take it from raw dirt. It has cows on it still. And then you'll take it through an entire 12 to 18 month process. And then you'll get it shovel ready, as we say. And then if you bought it, let's say you paid $5,000 per lot, you could sell it for $20,000, $30,000 a lot. Obviously the market, there's a lot of factors, but that's the idea.
Interesting. Flat Rock Estates is what we'll name this hypothetical one. Does a cow peeing on a flat rock? That goes way back. I don't know if that's the bad dad joke in me, but Flat Rock Estates, here it is. You've got it. You bought it as vacant land. You've done the development piece. So we know that the zoning works. Sometimes you could even go for rezoning. That sounds way risky. But then you're getting in the drawings, just just the civil layout for the land, not actually putting in the sewers or anything like that, but getting the drawings done, getting everything go basically to the point where you can almost green light it and say you've got, 100 units or 200 units, wherever it may be. And that's when it's sold. And that's the equity multiple there.
Exactly. Because think about it, like a DR Horton or a Lennar or any of those big boys, they have no interest in tying up their money for a year and a half, even though they know they can. That because they have requirements on how much cash on hand they have to have. they don't want to tie up money. So they'd rather pay a premium for someone to do all that work and then just deploy the capital when it's absolutely ready to build ground up, because that's where they make their money. And so the point is they don't really care how much they pay for it. They're going to pay whatever they can kind of squeeze out of their end buyers at the end of the day. And they can build those things pretty damn quick nowadays. So when rates were low, in 2021, I mean, we got in 2020. So that first 18 months that I was involved in the investment was insanity. It's still fine because there's still a housing shortage in the country. So even though rates doubled and it slowed down a bit and builders are a little bit more scared now than they were 3 years ago, all in all, it's still trending in the right direction as long as you're in the right markets, and the company that I'm involved in is.
Just generally, again, just hypothetical, and this is not a land entitlement show for sure, but interesting piece here. Sure. If, say, you've got this piece of vacant property, you're going to turn it into Flat Rock Estates. What is the additional sum of money, just a range that you would have to invest in order to get this entitlement process through?
So it's actually a lot less than you would think if you're doing it the right way. So what the allure was with the company that I was involved in is that they have these they structure the contracts in a way, and I don't want to give too much information, but they structure the contracts in a way to where they're really not coming out of pocket much until it's time to close. And again, that's 12 to 18 months down the line. Now they do have engineering costs and such that is significant. I mean, that could be six figures on land. So they're coming out of pocket and there's no guarantee that actually will close. And so there's risk. Absolutely. There's risk, but they are definitely being compensated for it. So, if you structure everything right, you're still six figures out of pocket, after a year and a half with everything, but you are considerably mitigating that risk by structuring it in the optimal way that kind of the team that I work with does, which is, not buying the land not closing until it's time to close. And again, just putting as little money down as possible.
Yeah. I did a 20 unit new construction site condo project, and I was 175,000 just on the drawings.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It can go exactly.
And then you said I love the idea of risk. When you shorten that time span, you're shrinking your risk. So when you reduce that time span, you're reducing your risk. And this one that I'm speaking of was actually during COVID. Like, we were just about ready to break ground and COVID hits. And it's just like, oh my goodness, it was.
Where was
horrendous.
it?
What's that?
Where was it?
It was in Michigan. So Michigan was it was horrendous time in Michigan. I had 6 flips going on at the time. And I mean, it was just, I got fined for working on projects. I got stopped, red tags for inspection. I got stopped. I got fined for my grass growing, but I could not go cut my grass. It was fascinating.
This is Michigan?
Yes. Yep.
This is Michigan. That would never happen in Florida where I am.
No, it wouldn't. No. Absolutely not. Two totally different worlds right there. So we've got land entitlement. I love this idea. And in my mind, I was like, all right, I'm thinking of this parcel of 10 acres kind of thing. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, picking this stuff through, where that could go, what that could be. But I do like the shorter time span. But just like fix and flip, you're still depending on other people, just a different level of people. Fix and flip for me.
You are. And as I said that, I was kind of thinking that, but the issue is the contractor that you're dealing with doesn't have a vested interest in selling the property for the maximum versus the partners they got skin in the game. So they want to make money like you. The contractor, you don't care. He might get paid and dip to the next job, or he might drag his feet because he already got paid, or you paid him, what he's ahead of you. Right. So that's why you always don't let him get ahead of you. But I just listen, maybe because I'm an attorney and I get the calls whenever the contractors dip and go to the next job. But, that's something I encounter all the time. I encountered it personally as an investor and all the time as an attorney. So I'm just a little leery, but it doesn't mean everyone's bad and everyone's going to do that to you.
Yeah. Some of I've got friends who are attorneys, and it's like, sometimes it's just, the conversation is just so negative all the time. It's like, all right, can we just be friends and stop thinking the worst of everything? But you've got to be safe. Yeah.
I like your comment. What I'll say is I am a deal making attorney. That's what my clients call me, a deal maker, not a deal breaker. And so I'm glad you said that. I want to explain the difference. because I think this is really one of my big differentiators, right? So being responsive is number one important to me as an attorney. That differentiates me from 90%. Number two is being a deal maker. And so it's understanding that my clients are investors, understanding that inherent with any investment is risk. You cannot avoid risk if you want to make money. It is impossible by definition. So my job is not to say, hey, this deal sucks because X, Y, and Z. No, my job is to say, look, here are the risks. Here's what could potentially go wrong. Your return, because that's what you do on your side as an investor. It's up to you. Do you want to make this investment or not? At the end of the day, here are the things we could do to mitigate that risk. If we try to do this, and this, at the end of the day, you make that decision. Now, sometimes my clients turn to me and say, well, what do you think? And then I can give an honest opinion. Yeah. But my job is not to meddle in their investments. My job is not to say you shouldn't take this investment or you shouldn't do this. That's their decision. As long as they're informed, I've done my job as an attorney. And the number three thing that I pride myself on is being trustworthy, and all of that kind of ties in. It's like looking out for their interest before my interest, and not just collecting fees just to collect them, but like, does this make sense, or is this going to benefit you in any way? So I'm glad you said that, because there's a lot of attorneys who kill deals just because they are not, they're not investors. They don't know that this is an inherent risk in any kind of a deal.
Like an inspector. Some inspectors just crush deals. And when you said get ahead of you, when you talk about contractors, yeah, sorry about that. To me, and always laying this out, and it's a great point too, because I want to make sure the listeners catch this. If you are working with contractors, there's whether a draw schedule or whatever you have, there's a way of paying the contractors so that you're not money out ahead of work. Right. You always, this is going to be an arm wrestling match. It always is, but between work and getting paid. And you want to set up a system. If you have a way of setting up a system or a draw system to where if they can provide the work and you can confirm that it's been completed and then the contractor gets paid, that's the best way to do it.
Yep. Right? So, and free tip, always get it in writing, because the number one issue that I have is clients who call me and the contractor ran out and I say, let me see the agreement. Well, we don't have an agreement. Well, good luck. Good luck.
Oh man. Yeah. And it's always the times when it's like, and it's gone bad, and then you're trying to work your way back through something and you don't have anything. So, and maybe there was 2 or 3 years prior to that where you didn't have anything and it worked out. And then this time it didn't. So Absolutely. That's rough. What states do you work in, Bishoy?
So I'm in Florida. I live in Florida. I do have clients all over the country and all over the world, actually, but I can practice anywhere in Florida. I'm licensed in New York as well. What I tell you is, the clients that are in other states, reach out. If it's something that's not super state specific, we can always talk about it. But obviously any kind of investment in Florida, if you're based in Florida, absolutely.
In Florida. And speaking of the recent weather challenges, what are some things that you're seeing related to law and investment right now? I know a lot of it's on your social media, so everybody can go and check you out on social media. What are some things that you're seeing right now, and that maybe those free tips that you're sharing with people who have been affected by the recent storms?
There are a lot of different angles on this. I mean, so many different angles. For me, the one that jumps out the most is the insurance. If you're talking big picture, is the insurance. Like we had the highest insurance premiums in the country, and it wasn't even close. Prior to 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, when the storms hit, those storms caused billions and billions. They still haven't calculated it, how much damage just in the Tampa Bay region where I live. We already had insurance companies leaving the state because it didn't make sense. We have it's called Citizens Insurance. I don't want to bore you with the details, but it's the only insurance company that by law has to be in Florida, and they're losing money. It's subsidized by the state of Florida, and they already were in trouble before these hurricanes hit. So people are not getting paid out. And the premiums are going to skyrocket. And by the way, that was already a major reason for people being unable to afford homes in Florida. So between the flood damage, between the insurance premiums, people in the area are scared about what happens if another storm hits, right? How can they afford to pay it? That's kind of the big picture, and I don't know where that all lands. What I do know is that your insurance, if you're in Florida, is going to be even higher next year, unfortunately. Now, kind of short term, midterm stuff, like if you're rebuilding, I posted a video about like the FEMA 50% rule. So if your house got destroyed, you can't just rebuild it if it's over 50% of the value of the property that you're rebuilding. You have to make sure it's up to the current flood codes, which could be very expensive, and your insurance provider doesn't typically cover something like that. So that's important to know. So there's things like there's a lot of different angles to this storm, and it's hitting people in very, putting them in bad spots. And so I'm trying to do the best that I can. And the only other thing I'll say, I don't practice insurance law, but I have a lot of friends who do. The insurance companies are not on your side. And I think most people know that by now, but they are not. It is an adversarial relationship at times like this. They are going to fight and I'll tell you a true story. I had a client, the first check the insurance comes was 5 years ago. First check the insurance offered him was $1,200. He ended up getting $250,000 from them, but he had to go. I don't know if it actually started litigation, or I think they were a week from litigation and then they settled. But that's not that abnormal. So never take the first offer from an insurance company. Always have someone advocating for you, whether it's your own adjuster, whether it's an attorney. And if you need someone in Florida, I absolutely can plug you in with the right people. But just if you've been affected by this stuff, make sure you're getting what you deserve. Don't just take the first settlement that the insurance throws your way, because they're trying to see who's desperate and who needs the money. So that's probably the last thing I'll say on the people that were affected in the sense of insurance claims.
Yeah, it's interesting. And the two storms have brought another storm, which is the whole insurance world. And I know, just looking at multifamily stuff, if I like looking when we're underwriting something and looking at the cost per unit on taxes and on insurance. And when you look at cost per unit on insurance, there can be places maybe in the Midwest or something where we're $600, $500-$600 a unit. Well, in Florida, it's going to be much, much higher, and could even be up to 2 to 3 times that in those units. And what does that do to rent in order for that to make a reasonable investment? It's crazy.
And that's part of the reason. And you mentioned multifamily, so let's talk about it. I mean, part of the issue that multifamily syndicators and operators are facing today, obviously we all know about the variable rate interest, right? So people took out 3-year loans in 2021 at 3%, and they were 3% for 3 years, and then they ballooned, right? So now they're 7 or 8. So that absolutely kills everything. But there's other costs too. I mean, we all know inflation, but insurance has doubled and even tripled. If you're near the water, your insurance might have tripled over the last 3 years. So if your cost of insurance per unit was, $200-$300 a month, now it's $700 a month, right? I mean, that is going to kill a deal in and of itself. And then you factor in the other stuff that I said. And then you factor in a plethora of new inventory that's come on the market with the multifamily stuff, at least in Tampa Bay. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. That's why you're seeing a lot of these multifamily trading below what they were just a few years ago. But the insurance was nobody was really talking about it as much because there were bigger issues, but it's absolutely a part of the reason.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some mistakes that you see investors make? I always love asking this question, like maybe the top 3 mistakes, no matter what asset class it is, but just in real estate investing in general, what are the top 3 mistakes that you see people make?
So number 1, always I say putting investment real estate in your personal name. Terrible idea. It's very simple. It's very cheap to do. Just don't put it in your name. And I'm going to speak to the audience right now. You are doctors, you are learned doctors, and you have a target on your back. And I wanted to say this, I probably should have led with this in the beginning. So everyone in my family is a doctor. My dad's a pharmacist. My mom's a dentist. My 3 sisters are dentists. One of them is married to a dentist. They're both pediatric. I was the only, I don't even want to call me an idiot or smart guy that decided to go into a different field. I'm not sure. Yeah. But that wasn't for me. I couldn't do it, but I am surrounded. I'm Egyptian. So everybody I know, I grew up with, like 30 people, 29 of us are in doctors, pharmacists, dentists, whatever. So this is like near and dear to me. And I tell you guys this, like, you have a target on your back. You cannot hide. Like 20 years ago, people couldn't maybe find you as easily. Every single thing now is available online. I'm pointing to my computer right now. Mm-hmm. And, unfortunately, you can't hide it no matter what you do. So take your name, your personal name off real estate. If you're in a certain state like Florida, put it in a land trust. That will prevent you from anybody from seeing you and prevent somebody from suing you for something that, you really didn't do or you really weren't negligent in. Number one tip, absolutely. Number two tip is, probably, I would say not having a good counselor in their corner, right? And so I think when you talk about it, Brett, you made a great point about like when you think of attorneys, you get scared. And I'm like, I'm the kind of attorney that's here to help you make money, right? I don't do like, I'm not going to sue you for malpractice. I'm here to, you got a deal. Let's figure out how to maximize profits and limit liability. That's my tagline. So having someone like me in your corner, what it does is from the very inception of the deal, whether it's an LOI or an actual purchase and sale agreement, we can not only determine where your liability is, but we can also negotiate different points that are going to give you leverage in the situation or help you make more money or save more money at the close or post closing. And so I think a lot of people sometimes get nervous about paying an attorney, but what you're paying me, you could make 10 times or 50 times over in, one deal, right? If
Or
you
lose.
have or lose, right? If you have me in your corner. And so,
Yeah.
and I don't mean me personally, but a good real estate attorney. And then the other side of that is think about the connections, right? You need money. I have clients with money. You need contractors. My clients are contractors. You need deal flow. I have syndicators on speed dial, right? So what do you need? Because I'm in the thick of it. And any good real estate attorney really is. So I think those are the two of the top things that I see people do. And then if I had to pick a third mistake that I see all the time, I would say, not vetting people properly and not putting things on paper kind of hand in hand. Cause I get a lot of, again, I have a ton of doctor clients and they don't do their due diligence. They meet someone says, give me $200,000 and we're going to buy this land and develop it. And you get half and I get half. Cool. Here's the money. I'm so busy, depending on what you do, but like I work 80 hours a week at the hospital. And so I don't really know what you're doing. And then a year later, you're like, hey, didn't I give you 200 grand? What happened? And then, things fall apart and then you call me and then I ask for an agreement and there's no agreement. So it becomes much harder to do anything about it, right? So protect yourself with written agreements and always vet the person that you're going into business with. And if you don't know how to do that, reach out to an attorney who could do that for you. I literally do this for a living. So I think those are 3 or maybe 4 tips that really could be applicable to a lot of people on a day-to-day basis that are doing deals.
Those are huge, man. Those 3 things, I think we'll cut this up and ship this out so you don't have to listen to the podcast to catch this, because those are 3 huge things. The first thing you mentioned about not putting something in your personal name, and I think a lot of physicians and a lot of us, even in our first properties, become accidental landlords, and the property's already in our name, right? Because it's in our personal name. I myself, my home is not in my personal name, so I don't. My first one may have been, but once we built the trust and all that, then we said that the paper trust, not the trust in the process, but we have this a little bit different. But becoming an accidental landlord, maybe we've got it in our personal name. The one thing I want to ask you about, Bishoy, is there's so many people out there, especially in the single family residential world, and there are so many turnkey providers of single family residential to physicians, to high income earners, to where they say, hey, you put this in your name. Obviously, I'm sure they're not giving them legal advice, but there's a process. You can put it in your name. That way you can get a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac loan. You can keep the interest rate down, and then you can just quit claim it over to an LLC. Do you have any experience in that process at all?
Yeah, I have a ton. The number one reason people want to put property in their personal name, besides if they're being lazy or dumb, which that's also a big reason, but if they have an actual reason that's a legitimate reason, it's because they can't get financing outside their personal name, to your point. So I do encounter this quite a bit. The way we overcome that is, there's 2 ways. One, you move it into an LLC post-closing. In that case, you do run the risk of the lender calling the loan due. There's the due on sale clause. You know it. So there's a possibility of that. The workaround, and again, I'm in Florida, so the best state for land trust law. Some states have good land trust laws, some don't. But if you move it into a land trust, there's something called the Garn-St. Germain Act of 1980. And it basically says that the lender cannot call the loan due if you're moving the property into a revocable trust, which the land trust is a revocable trust because that means you can modify it after you create it. So if we get pushback from the lender, we cite the Garn-St. Germain Act of 1980, and we say, look, this is what's happening. And then the lender backs off. So it's kind of a workaround that, I've coached my clients through. So there are ways around it. And I certainly understand when people tell me they have to finance it, but that's not, the risk doesn't justify keeping it in there after closing. So, and it's a case by case basis. I'm definitely not giving advice.
There's an additional risk that's in there because, sometimes, well, in DSCRs, you got to have seasoning. But most of the time, there's a tenant in place. There's contractors there. There's people walking by. Like, there's so much risk just in general. And again, me back 20 years ago when I had one property and no money, that was different than somebody who has MD after their name. And they could have no properties. But if you have MD after your name, you're all of a sudden more attractive to litigate against. Right?
I want to bring up a point. Like, I just want to explain it because I think when I explain it like this, I think people understand it better. So let's say you own 20 properties and you are just the most perfect landlord in the world. You've never done anything wrong. Everything's cool in your properties, right? But they're in your name. If your kid, you have a car in your name and your kid is driving your car, he's 17, she's 17, whatever, and she hits somebody, fender bender, right? Person gets out, they're fine, but then they find out, who owns the car. Then their attorney, first thing they do if they hire an attorney, the attorney finds out who you are. You're a doctor. That in and of itself, like you said, that's a bullseye. But then they're going to look and see, oh, you own 20 properties here. Okay, So now all of a sudden what's going to happen is that attorney now knows that you have assets. And if they're in your personal name, they can come after those assets, right? That's the whole point. Not only is it alerting them to what you own, it's also giving them the right to go after those assets, which is absolutely ludicrous in this day and age that you have the ability that you're giving someone the ability to go after you. Also, think of it like this. If you have your personal name on these properties, it's like the world seeing your bank account. I mean, quite literally, everyone knows I own 26 properties. Like, why would you want someone to know that? Nothing good can come from that, right? If you want to show someone what you own, like a bank, you can always show them the legal documents on the back end, right? That's what I do to my clients, but you don't need to show the world. Nothing good can come of that. So I think when you think of those examples, like when you understand practically what happens when you hold real estate in your own name, I think it kind of dawns on you a little bit more versus saying, well, I've done this for 5 years and I haven't had an issue, so why should I bother now? Well, I mean, that doesn't change the fact that that could all change tomorrow, right?
Yeah. Just something that's coming to my mind too. I'm not a politically correct person. So when I say things, I say them, I say the way I feel. The one thing I did pick up there, and I think even looking back to me, even the first time that I had a property in my own name wasn't because I was dumb. It just, I wasn't around the right people. And I had no idea that there were other ways or other mechanisms to paper trail these things.
Yep.
Now myself 20 years ago, I may have qualified as dumb, Bishoy. So I don't know. It could be like that.
Listen, I don't mean that you're a new investor and you don't know, because you have to learn at some point. But I will tell you this, like, I have almost never talked to somebody that doesn't know that you should put a property in this day and age. I'm just talking about like today with the internet, with Instagram, with all the stuff out there. Everybody knows you should have it in an LLC. And so it's always weird that that's the first thing I say to people. But I promise you, the amount of clients that I have and investors that I know that have been doing this for 20 years, that are real estate professionals themselves, like coaching other people in certain aspects of real estate. And they themselves are like, yeah, I don't know. I just have it in my personal name. I have the Airbnb in my personal name. I don't know. I'm like, are you out of your mind? The Airbnb is the riskiest. That is the risk. That's where they're getting the most drunk. And that's where they're partying the most.
And you have the most turnover, most different people coming in. You don't know. Yeah, that's crazy.
Oh my God.
The craziest stuff that I've happened in my portfolio, Bishoy, has been in an Airbnb.
Of course. Do you have like pools in yours?
No, we don't have any pools. Yeah.
That's always takes it up a notch.
Yeah. Hey, this direction then with the LLC versus the land trust, and when I started, so I started with a group called Fortune Builders way back when, and there was a group that they brought in that was called NCH, Nevada Corporate Headquarters, and was basically like a consultant. And we still get, I always say this when I talk with people, for the listeners, I'm pointing my finger one direction, pointing the finger the other direction. There's the attorney and the accountant, the CPA.
Yeah.
And it never feels like anybody's ever on the same page. So sometimes these consultants come in and are able to help out. But in this process, we talked about the real estate privacy trust, REPT, and then that sounds similar to a land trust. Where, I guess, does the land trust then have the bank account, and then really, how does that train of money work to keep the separate, right? So my name's not out on things, right?
Yeah.
Anonymity. That's what I was looking for.
Anonymity. Yeah. I'll comment first on the real
Do
estate.
it. Have fun with it. Yeah.
The attorney versus CPA thing is hilarious to me, because what it oftentimes comes down to, I never give tax advice because that's just not my area. And I love CPAs and I work with them every day. The thing is that a lot of these battles between me and the CPAs is because they don't want to do the extra bookkeeping, even though it makes complete sense from a legal perspective. So a lot of times it'll just be like a three-way call. It'll be like me, you, and your CPA. And then you'll be like, what do I do? Like, explain it to them and let's hash it out. I'll be like, look, you should do it this way because this protects you in the most way. I know your CPA is going to be a little annoyed because there's more, businesses or more trusts or whatever. But if you want to optimize your protection, this is how you do it. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you why I'm suggesting this. At the end of the day, if you want to have it all under one company, that's up to you. Here are the risks. That's my style. But that's funny you say that, because that is something that we encounter. I would say 8 times out of 10, the client sides with me. But if they're a newer client or they don't have that much, so like, let's just simplify. Totally fine. Doesn't hurt my feelings. As far as the workflow and the structure, again, I'm not going to give advice on this show to an audience about like, you should do this, and this way. But the idea is that the land trusts don't have bank accounts. They don't have EIN numbers. They don't file tax returns. They are simply disregarded entities for the purpose of asset protection. Land trusts can only hold one asset: land, real estate, right? They cannot hold, they cannot hold personal property. They cannot have bank accounts, etc. So you have to then flow through the land trust, and then the beneficial owner, the beneficiary of the land trust,
an LLC.
That's the level. If you want to have it as an LLC, or if you want to have individually, that's the level that the bank account would go to. That's the level that the money would flow through ultimately. And you could add layers to it. It could be 5 layers deep, but in a simple example, that's how it would all flow. And it doesn't affect the anonymity because nobody knows who the bank account is. Nobody knows who the beneficiary is. That is not public information. The only public information is the name of the trustee, because it gets recorded on public record. And so that's why it's important that you have someone who knows what they're doing to set your trust up. Like an attorney.
Hey, so what happens on a property, say, we have a house back in the old Flat Rock Estates that we developed, and that house is a long-term buy and hold. It's going to be a rental. But if the land trust owns that property, how does that lease get wrote up, and who collects the rent for that?
That's a phenomenal question. So there's a couple ways around this. Number one, you can have, if you have several properties, if you have many properties that you manage, which a lot of my clients do, then you create a separate third-party management company. And that's like a separate LLC. It has its own bank account. It has its own books. It has its own expenses. It's a legitimate business. And by doing that, you're really doing 2 things. Number one, you're getting more tax benefits. And number 2, because you're able to expense more things. And number 2, you're creating an extra layer of separation in terms of liability between you, Brett, as the owner and as the manager. And what we don't want to do is conflate the two. You don't want to be the owner and the manager wearing the same hat. You want the manager to be the manager and the owner to be the owner, and the owner to have nothing to do with the property, or as little as possible. That's if you have several properties. We create basically a tri-party agreement that says, this is the management company. You're going to pay all the money to them. The money will flow through, and we'll remit 90% of the profits to the owner, and just hypothetically 10% will be kept after expenses by management. Okay, cool. That's pretty simple in theory. If you don't have a management company and you're just like a single person, it's pretty simple. We just on the lease, we just say, this is where you're going to make the checks to, this is who you'll pay them to. And then if you have like a property manager or whatever, we'll list it on there. We might add them to the lease. It's all situational, but the idea is that, you would just make sure the checks are not written out to that land trust, because then you can't cash them.
So, this is interesting, the whole conflating things together. And sometimes back in the day when I started building this, and I give people this analogy all the time, I set up this foundation. And it was like, I'm going to build $100 million building on this foundation because I've got this LLC and this LLC, and we're doing this over here. And you don't know my name. You don't know my agent. You don't know any of this stuff. But then all I had sent on top of that, Bishoy, was this little ragged 2-bedroom cottage that's sitting on this massive foundation. So I was creating so much work between the bookkeeping, the cost of bookkeeping, the administrative side. The biggest thing I created was more opportunities for me to conflate. You have to watch when you create things difficult, where if I've got, a credit card for this company, and then all of a sudden I pay for it over here, well, boom, that corporate veil is gone, and everything, my whole foundation just crumbled because I didn't do something that I should have done. So that's one thing I always stress, like, don't make it too complicated. You have to see what's the likelihood of you following through with these things? Because the more complicated we make it, there's these little intricacies that we have to keep up with, right?
Yes. And you said the magical words, the corporate veil. So for those who don't know, quick lesson, piercing the corporate veil is a super important concept in the law. And it basically says, if you treat this company like your piggy bank and you don't treat it with the respect of a real legitimate company, it's not going to protect you from personal liability. So in the example you just gave, Brett, is a phenomenal example. If I have an LLC and I'm then using that credit card for, to go shopping for my groceries or for my yoga lessons or whatever, personal stuff, and I get sued and they come and see all that, which they will if they have a good attorney and there's a legitimate case, they can say, look, why would we shield you from the liabilities when you're acting like you and this company are one? That is piercing the corporate veil. And that is the last thing you want to do, because it renders the LLC or the trust useless. Okay. I think you bring up a good point, and I have kind of two extreme kinds of clients. They're not all one extreme or the other, but there's two extremes, right? So you got the client that does what you did, and they want to set up $10,000 worth of legal work before they buy their first property. And I'm like, this is where like the third leg of what I do, the trustworthiness. I'm like, dude, you don't need that. You don't just create an LLC or a simple land trust and let's get started. And your third or fourth property, let's revisit. So you got the Bretts of the world, and then you got the other extreme, which is the people I mentioned, which is, we have 30 properties and they're all in one LLC, or they're in our own name, which is even worse. And then it's like, well, that's probably worse, by the way, because at least here you're protected, but you may be, your little 2 is protected. But
yeah,
at the same time, I'm a very practical person. It's like, you do not need all this, but just go buy a property. Go, even if you put 2 in one LLC to get started, your first 2 in one LLC, it's not the end of the world. We can manage. You get your third one, you get your fourth one. Let's revisit every 6 months, or every time you buy a second property or a fourth property, or, we can always retool and remove and reconfigure. But just, try not to fall on those extremes is my advice to everybody out there.
Yeah. And that making it too complicated, and you need to know yourself in what you're going to go through and what you're going to do, because you can create these ways that just, if I know I'm not going to follow through with this, then why even doing it? And again, the same way I have these conversations, I'm just think about where you're at. This first one, okay, one LLC, because when somebody comes to me and they say, all right, I'm going to do 12 properties. I want to do an LLC for each one. I'm like, whoa. Wait a minute. Because to me, Bishoy, I'm thinking of the bookkeeping behind 12 bank accounts.
You're the CPA.
Yes, paying taxes in 12 different companies. It's like, this is mind blowing. But this idea with the land trust is really remarkable. Finding that way to have, instead of the property being titled in Flat Rock Estates LLC, that could be the management company, where now we could have Land Trust 1, Land Trust Left Street, Land Trust 7, or whatever it may be. They would all be the flow through into these LLCs in this particular kind of hypothetical, to where now I only have one bank account.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, again, we can dive as deep as we want into this, but just to keep it simple, there are ways that you can streamline your taxes, just reiterating what you're saying, and still have different entities, a 1-to-1 ratio. So one property per entity. And the land trust is, for me, the easiest way to do it. And then owning that, you could have the same entity owning all of those land trusts. So you're still protected, but then you have the money flowing all through one entity. And then, I mean, underneath that, you can get as creative as you or your CPA want. There's no rules on, right, what you are and aren't allowed to do under there. So to your point, you can still optimize protection and streamline, bookkeeping at the same time. It's not mutually exclusive like a lot of people think.
Yeah. Amazing. And there's years and years of tears and stress and strain in this conversation that I'm having with you.
You know so much that I could tell you've been through it.
Man, I've struggled and I've strained, and this is the kind of thing like now I don't know everything. I don't have everything set up perfect. I mean, some days are easier than others. But this is what I want to share with everybody else. And in this journey, I look back and I can literally remember moments in my life where I'm having these conversations in these, Zoom meetings and whatever, Skype or whatever may have been at the point, and literally coming to tears, watching tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars just going away, and it's just those moments like, okay, we can make light of it now, but listen to me. This is what happened to us, so being able to share that, to give these people, and again, not that they're dumb, but now you can surround yourself with people who have been through this. It's easier. The speed of information now should be to your advantage.
Yeah, you got a phenomenal platform to do it. And why let other people make the same mistakes you did?
Yep. Crazy. So speaking of that, if you could go back 10 years, knowing what Bishoy knows now, your knowledge, your experience, and you could set beside somebody who may have been on the similar path. Maybe they're coming from a family of medicine and kind of went a little different direction, angling towards law. What would you tell that person?
I would tell them to be more aggressive. I would tell them to, just fall forward. That's something that I think as attorneys and maybe me is like, you're always so cautious. I mean, I consider myself a risk taker, actually, believe it or not, in my investment, but like, you're still like super cautious. And I always hear things about people doing things because they're always calling me when people rip them off. So there is that side of it, but like, just fall forward, just buy the property. Don't overthink. Analysis by paralysis is a very real thing. So all those things just kind of move forward, and the market, the real estate market, I mean, literally you cannot lose. The only way you can lose is if you sell, or if you sell at the raw, panic sell basically, or if you over leverage yourself. But if you hold on to real estate, in the history of mankind, real estate has over the long term never gone down in value. It's only gone up. And by the way, plug for Tampa, if you are looking to buy in Florida, and the prices have been out of control for the past, I mean, we've been in a bull market for 15 years now. Mm-hmm. This is the time to buy. Like, I'm so bullish on Florida and I'm so bullish on Tampa Bay, but people are panicking right now. And when people panic, that's when you strike. That's when you buy real estate. And that's what I'm looking at, right? I'm actively looking to buy whatever makes sense for me. And, I will tell you this is my opinion. The next 3 to 6 months is going to be very ugly for the housing market. It's already happening. We already see it. Prices in Florida are down 30% from their peak, 20 to 30%, depending on where you are. They're going to fall even further. Okay. Mortgage rates are back up. Right. And so everything is trending in the direction of, and they're saying soft landing. There's no soft landing. People are feeling the pain right now, and it's going to get worse. This is my opinion, but I feel very strongly about it. If you are in the market with dry powder, AKA money in the bank that you're waiting to deploy, this is the time to do it. They're already this week, you probably saw it, Brett. They're already talking about, the commercial, the commercial real estate, is on the up and up again. We hit the bottom and we're peaking. I'm like, no, we didn't. But the fact that
those bridge loans aren't even all come up yet,
100%. Next year's going to be way worse. But the fact that they're saying that means that we are maybe kind of approaching that area, but like it's still the time to buy. And the people who say that stuff, they have a vested interest. So just pay attention to who's saying that and what they want, how they want the markets to respond. So the advice that I would give myself 10 years ago is the advice I'm giving you today is like, buy what you can now, but don't buy to sell in 1 year for 20% more. That's a losing mentality. And that's how you lose your shirt. Buy to hold, buy to refinance in 2-3 years when you have some equity in it, and then you could reinvest that money, buy to cash flow. But whatever you do, buy. You know what I mean? And it could be a limited partnership. It could be a limited investment. It could be a syndication that you're, just putting 100,000 or 25,000 in. But this is the best opportunity to buy real estate in 15 years in the area that I'm in Florida and in Tampa Bay specifically, if you're an investor out here. So same advice, funny enough.
Yep. And that buying the cash flow, even if you're looking at the appreciation model, make sure that cash flow covers, and make sure that you're projecting these insurance issues and taxes in some places. It's just, and don't trust anybody. Get your own numbers. There's so much to that. Yeah,
that's right. That's right. And that's where those people got in trouble with the underwriting in 2021 is they just projected rents were going to just keep going up 10% a year and expenses were going to stay at 2 or 3% a year increases. And it flipped. Everything was the opposite. So you have to underwrite it very conservatively. And by the way, you can do that now because it's a buyer's market. So you can underwrite as conservative as you want and still find deal flow.
Yep. Yeah. I submitted an offer earlier today, and the seller, and this is on a smaller property, the seller would be eating a whole bunch of money. And to me, it's like, it's like when you first write those, like, man, I don't know why anybody would do this. Well, that's just the situation they're in. And I can't change my numbers being written conservatively. I can't change my numbers. I'm not here to make a deal. I'm here to look for a deal. And you being the deal maker, how can the listeners get a hold of you, Bishoy?
If you're on social media, it's at Attorney Bishoy, Attorney Bishoy. And if you don't have social media, or if you're just an email person, it's Bishoy, Bishoy, at Levacy Legal. That's LEV like Victor, ACY, legal.com.
Awesome. And we'll have the listeners get a hold, especially if they're in Florida and even in other spots, just having a great conversation. I've really enjoyed my time with you here today. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. It's been great connecting. I feel like we got that same energy going.
Yeah, absolutely. So the listeners out there today, thank you for your time and thank you for your energy. So no matter where you're at, what you're doing, you're driving, you're walking around the hospital, wherever you're at, the gym, hopefully if you're driving, you're paying attention to the road. But if you're giving us the attention that we have here today, thank you so much for your attention, and reach out to Bishoy. This is definitely something, not even if you're in Florida or not, these are the kind of conversations that really start planting the seed that give you the ability to think outside of the box a little bit. Not only protect yourself, but think of the future. And building relationships is huge. Bishoy hit this right on the nose. I mean, it's not about the particular service that somebody's offering. It's the equity that you're building in the relationship. We're appreciative of your attention and building that equity here with us. This is the Real Estate Mogul MD.